Bang.
Batman Forever has an identity problem. On the surface level, it's a kid-friendly movie, with over-the-top moments and full of bright neon colors.
Blast it!
But watching it carefully, there is a deep, insightful character drama that is hidden underneath the bombastic soundtrack, saturated colors, and the nipples on the Batsuit.
What's wrong?
So,
Riddle me this!
how do we analyze Batman Forever? As mindless entertainment made for kids? Or as a profound adaptation of the Batman mythos? And what difference does it make?
It just raises too many questions.
Too many questions and very few answers that make Batman Forever the most complicated Batman movie.
Start this party with a bang!
Batman Forever is divided between fun action-adventure made for entertainment and serious character moments with deep symbolic elements. The result is a tonally disjointed film that leaves people frustrated and explains the low ratings and scores that the movie has received. That said, the movie was a box office hit in 1995, surpassing the financial success of Batman Returns and becoming a fan favorite among children.
I lost count!
So basically, kids love this movie, but adults hate it. The conflict begins because the director of the movie wanted to do one thing, but the studio wanted another. Warner Bros. Wanted to avoid the problems associated with Batman Returns and the darker vision of Tim Burton's Batman, which affected the chances of marketing the movie for children. The studio wanted to maximize the profits by making a movie that was completely kid-friendly. This is how Tim Burton assumed the role of producer of the new film, and the studio hired Joel Schumacher, a filmmaker whose career went all the way back to the 1970s and who had recently directed Going Down and The Client, two movies that had been successful at the box office. Both movies were serious character dramas, very far from the amazing world of comic book adaptations, because Joel Schumacher was a serious filmmaker, but the studio needed someone to take the Batman cinematic franchise into a completely different direction. This is when the first conflict began. Joel Schumacher wanted to do a serious Batman story. Not only that, he wanted to make a proper adaptation of the iconic 1986 Frank Miller story Batman Year One. Schumacher wanted to tell the origin story of Batman, like it was never done before in the movies, with a serious prequel that explored the tragic background of Bruce Wayne. That was the first of Schumacher's ideas that the studio rejected. Warner Bros. Was not interested in a prequel. They wanted a sequel, and one that would be easy to advertise towards children. Despite this initial rejection, Schumacher assumed the role of director of the movie and decided to make a radical change to the franchise, turning it into his own vision of Batman. His intention from the very beginning was to avoid as much as possible every reference or material from the Tim Burton movies, and he had the total support of the studio in that area, which is ironic because this radical change makes the movie feel less like a sequel, which is what the studio supposedly wanted. Schumacher then assembled a whole new cast for the movie after the original Batman actor Michael Keaton dropped out of the project. Keaton did not like the direction the new movie was taking.
I'm leaving.
And in his place, Val Kilmer was cast as Batman, with Jim Carrey playing an updated version of the 1960s Riddler.
Now that's impressive!
Nicole Kidman as the nonsensical romantic interest,
And call me Chase.
Tommy Lee Jones reluctantly playing the first and most awful live-action version of Two-Face,
Blind, stupid, simple, doodah, clueless.
and Chris O'Donnell doing the part of an edgy 90s young adult Robin.
Going for a little ride on my love machine, baby.
Besides the cast and the crew, almost everything else was new. The screenwriters, the production design of the sets, Gotham City, the Batcave, the Batmobile, the newest CGI technology, and the music are all the new elements that created a very different experience from the first two films. This is the reason why Batman Forever was a sequel in name only, as the only two actors who remained were Michael Gove as Alfred and Pat Hingle as Commissioner Gordon. And that's also a major point of criticism against the movie, as people expected elements from the original movies to make a comeback. But the frustration wasn't just because of the new cast and crew, but also because of the new tone and themes. Batman Forever is a movie that explores a profound theme such as duality, but it does it in an absurd tone that doesn't fit with the theme. A movie that explores the duality of the heroes and the villains, their conflicting personalities and characterization. A movie about characters who struggle with duality, who struggle with their own identity crisis, but the pain and the struggle of these characters is hidden underneath crazy, colorful layers of mindless entertainment. And this theme, this duality, is also reflected in the treatment of the movie itself. Watching Batman Forever is almost like watching two different movies at the same time. On one hand, there's the action-adventure movie that focuses on the superheroes and supervillains, while on the other hand, there's the serious movie that focuses on the psychology and humanity of Bruce Wayne. This is the source of the second conflict, because the superhero sequences and the serious moments are presented in very different ways. For instance, whenever Batman, Two-Face or the Riddler are on the screen, the cinematography automatically becomes expressionistic, with Dutch camera angles, revealing the unstable nature of the characters, as well as extreme lighting choices that emphasize the grotesque and exaggerated proportions of the characters and the architecture of the new Gotham City. These moments are also notable for the over-the-top performances, bombastic soundtrack, corny dialogues, and exaggerated physicality.
Was that over the top? I can never tell.
Schumacher drew inspiration for these moments from the comic books of his childhood, the Batman comics of the 1950s and 1960s, and he actually manages to capture the otherworldly feeling of those comic books. These shallow and entertaining moments are the majority of Batman Forever, and they are drastically different from the serious human moments that are present in only a fraction of the film. Every time that the movie takes a look at the tragic past and the trauma of Bruce Wayne, his personal relationship with Dr. Chase Meridian and his new partner, Dick Grayson, the tone and atmosphere of the movie changes completely. The cinematography of these moments becomes very naturalistic, with steady and balanced camera work that suggests a neutral point of view, the point of view of a normal person, maybe even the point of view of the director himself. These moments also feature realistic lighting, with high contrast that suggests that the characters are hiding secrets deep within their minds. A very interesting artistic choice, but could it also be a subliminal message about the secrets that the director himself was hiding? The performances by the actors in these moments becomes quieter, somber, and moody. Val Kilmer conveys the actual psychological torment of a man like Bruce Wayne who is haunted by his past. This Bruce Wayne is much more traumatized, and there is nothing here of the playboy persona that he should play. Kilmer truly nailed these tormented moments, but how much of this performance was influenced by the guiding hand of the director? The flashbacks to Bruce Wayne's tragic past are filled with dramatic iconography, some of which was taken from the Tim Burton Batman, which ironically goes against the plan of rejecting all of his ideas. But these flashbacks also feature new moments created exclusively for the film. These moments perfectly capture the sadness, the tragedy of Bruce Wayne that had been illustrated hundreds of times in the comics, but that nobody had managed to capture so well before in the movies. And all of this is why Batman Forever is an absolutely inconsistent film.
What do you got back there?
Master Wayne's dead wives.
The serious moments of deep character exploration are reduced and forced to coexist with the over-the-top filmmaking. And this duality, this identity crisis, reflects the attitude that Joel Schumacher had when it came to Batman. Schumacher grew up reading the 1950s and 1960s Batman comics, and that's the reason why his Batman in the movie is corny, campy, and definitely not serious enough.
It's the car, right? Chicks love the car.
But Joel Schumacher also had a personal connection and an intimate level of understanding of the character of Bruce Wayne, and that's the reason why the serious character moments are so profound and different. Joel Schumacher lost his father when he was only 4 years old, and looking back at these scenes where the kid Bruce Wayne goes through the pain of losing his parents, it's obvious why these are such drastically different moments.
Just to give you a feeling of what it would be like to be a child this age.
and have the responsibility of not only being an orphan, the fear and loneliness to be a child that age. And I lost my own father when I was 4, and I think it's something you carry with you. Any of you who are listening to this who've lost anybody close, you know what it's like. And if you've lost a parent when you're young, it's with you, always.
This is a director who understood the mindset of the young Bruce Wayne to a personal, intimate level. That's the reason why his very first idea when he was hired was to make an adaptation of Batman Year One.
Batman Year One, the Frank Miller comic, was always my favorite. And I was always hoping that I would do that one.
Schumacher wanted to tell the origin story of Batman because he understood what Bruce Wayne went through, and he wanted to express that in his movie. And even after the studio interfered and changed the original plan, Schumacher still managed to include those moments, though the story arc of Bruce Wayne was originally going to be longer and more profound, as we can see in the deleted scenes of the movie.
Maybe I didn't become Batman to fight crime. Maybe it was to fight that fear.
And instead you became the fear.
Batman Forever was originally going to be longer, and the arc of Bruce Wayne struggling with his identity crisis was going to be the central part of the movie. The climax of the film, where the Riddler forces Batman to literally choose between Bruce Wayne or Batman, would have worked much better if those deleted scenes were kept in the final cut.
Who am I, Alfred? I don't know anymore.
Joel Schumacher was an openly gay man, and if anyone would understand what it means to go through an identity crisis, that's him. He was the right man to tell that story, but sadly, that wasn't the case. Batman Forever has always been criticized as a mediocre movie, and Schumacher is almost always singled out as the man responsible, and I think that's unfair. Schumacher didn't have total creative control over the movie. He literally had to do what the studio wanted him to do, and maybe his only fault was to compromise his creative vision in order to direct a blockbuster movie like Batman. But even with all the studio interference, even after all the changes and deleted scenes and the problematic actors creating trouble during production, Joel Schumacher was always brave enough to own up to his work. Not once he complained or blamed the studio for changing his ideas, his vision, his cut. Even when talking about the deleted scenes, he always said that they were cut because of time limitations. He didn't hold a grudge against the studio. He always stood up for his work and was proud of the movie that him and his team created. And that's how I learned to respect Joel Schumacher. Many directors of modern superhero movies are narcissistic, pretentious, or suffer from inflated egos, and some of them are completely out of place.
Yes, exactly.
But Schumacher was different. He was by no means an extraordinary filmmaker, but he was never the incompetent director that people make him out to be. Batman Forever may be an inconsistent movie with an identity crisis, but that doesn't mean that there is no artistic merit to the film.
Really?
While the music, the plot, and the performances of the movie are not artistically driven or expressive enough to evoke an emotional response, there are many visual themes that have deep symbolic connections that Schumacher clearly intended to be part of the movie. For instance, the image of the bat that traumatized and terrified the young Bruce Wayne when he fell down into the cave. This image is a visual representation of trauma, the powerful emotion of fear and guilt that Bruce Wayne felt and which got stuck in his mind forever, forcing him to adopt the identity of Batman. The bat is also the image that drives Edward Nygma insane, creating a parallel connection between him and Batman, in which the bat is the catalyst to an identity crisis and insanity. Another interesting symbolism in this movie is the first cinematic appearance of Robin, which happens in a movie where Batman starts to become a brighter character, abandoning the dark and gritty versions of the first films. This development reflects the comic book history of Batman, where he abandoned his darker origins when the Boy Wonder was introduced and the Dark Knight became a brighter character. Well, that might be a stretch, and probably one of those eerie coincidences that happen every now and then. But there's another symbolism that is definitely not coincidental, and that is the handshake. Schumacher chooses to create a visual representation of salvation in the form of a handshake, where he would make these close-ups of handshakes that happen in very specific and important moments over the course of the film. The most important ones are associated with the character of Robin, in which the visual symbolism of salvation is very deliberate in his very first appearance, where he performs an extremely dangerous acrobatic feat and he is quite literally saved when his hand reaches the hand of his father. The second time happens when the hand of Robin reaches deep into the sand to grab Batman's hand and save him from a certain death. The third time happens in the Batcave, when Robin officially becomes Batman's partner, metaphorically saving Batman from facing two dangerous enemies by himself. And the fourth time happens in the climax, when Robin gives Two-Face a hand and saves him from falling to his death. Schumacher literally transforms the handshake into a visual metaphor for salvation. A very powerful symbolism that can also be seen in the first meeting between Bruce Wayne and Edward Nygma, where the misunderstood genius refuses to let go of Bruce Wayne's handshake. While it is all part of Nygma's extreme characterization, it can also symbolize the unsuccessful attempt of a man asking to be saved, but being denied the chance of salvation, after which he chooses a path of damnation. There is no denying that Schumacher had very interesting artistic ideas.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
However, there is one final symbolism in Batman Forever that is perhaps the biggest riddle of them all. The one concept, the one symbol that appears all throughout Batman Forever and which apparently has no meaning, no connection whatsoever. The symbol is the eye, the human eye. This is the most consistent visual element of the entire movie. There are eyes everywhere in this film, from the first giant eye prop that Batman crashes through with a helicopter in the opening sequence, to the eye-shaped hole in the roof of the circus, from which Dick Grayson watches his dead family, laying on the floor, which is also painted and illuminated to resemble an eye, just like the drums of the circus at the beginning of that same sequence. There are eyes in the most obvious moments, like when Bruce is knocked unconscious and the camera zooms into his eye, and then the eye opens, creating a smooth transition between scenes. But there's also eyes even in the most unlikely moments, like when Nygma is telling his version of the accident to the police, while in the background there is literally a frantic eye occupying a whole TV screen. And the strangest thing about this is that it doesn't have a clear meaning. Why did Schumacher feel so strongly about eyes? Is there a greater reason to have this imagery included everywhere in the movie, even in the rooftop of the Riddler's lair, which looks like a giant all-seeing eye? Is it a representation of the Riddler's plan of having eyes on everyone in the world, or was Schumacher simply part of the Illuminati? That's the biggest riddle of them all. Now, in all seriousness, all of these symbols and hidden meanings are only available to someone willing to analyze the film in order to showcase the artistic merit and intentions of Joel Schumacher. But in the end, none of it matters, because the audiences of the world have decided that Batman Forever is a movie that doesn't work. And I also think that's unfair. The movie's biggest flaw was to try to entertain children in a time when the comic book genre of movies in Hollywood was reaching the age of maturity. In other words, adults wanted to enjoy superhero movies as much, if not more, than children. And that's why the movie was a critical failure, and why many people consider that the movie doesn't work. But I disagree. I think that Batman Forever absolutely works because the movie was not made for adults. And I say this as someone who was a kid in the 90s and who loved Batman Forever so much that I must have watched it at least a dozen times on TV. I will never forget playing with a micro playset of Batman Forever that featured a complete Batcave with the Batmobile included, or borrowing the Batman and Two-Face action figures from my cousin, and even eating my meals on my Batman Forever plate that I still keep in my collection. That's why Batman Forever works, because it kept the image of Batman alive and well in the mind of millions of children around the world. This movie captivated the imagination of a whole generation of kids, something that we can't say about the modern Batman movies. And if all those kids in the 90s could write reviews and rate movies in Rotten Tomatoes, then maybe Batman Forever would have the highest scores and ratings of any other Batman movie. Batman Forever is a reminder that superheroes should be for all ages, not because it's dumb entertainment, but because these characters, these movies, teach us valuable lessons about life, about ourselves, and they help us become the adults that we are today. These movies are important because they help to raise the next generation of comic book fans, and the modern superhero movies could learn a thing or two about movies like Batman Forever. I would like to dedicate these final words to all of my patrons, who are very supportive of my work, and a special shoutout goes to Marco Daniel for being an all-around awesome guy. This video is for you, Marco. If you would like to see more videos like this one, then please consider joining the growing list of patrons, where you will get early access to my videos without those pesky ads, and the chance to be part of my History of Batman series in the future. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for new Batman videos every month.